Hello friends, and welcome to this sort of prototype of my new filming location. Who's to say where I'll end up in the next one? So today we are talking about The Big Book of Lesbian Horror Stories. Very self-explanatory title. Now what's interesting about this book is that it has a very pulp novel kind of aesthetic going on, obviously. Breasts straining to be free. But this book was written in 2002, which actually made me quite excited, because that tells me that they're probably purposely trying to imitate the pulp genre of the past, but in a more fun and modern way that leaves out some of the more unfortunate parts. I talked about this a little bit more in my video about Satan Was a Lesbian, which is an actual pulp novel from 1966. I talked about how the pulp novel genre and that whole trend was kind of the first platform for queer relationships, gender struggles, etc. to be explored in fiction. However, because of the time, to get these sorts of things published, there had to be these overarching themes and these tragic endings that kind of proved that queerness was immoral and terrible and would somehow be karmically punished. Satan Was a Lesbian, great example because it's extremely heavy-handed. Literally being a lesbian is satanic and will kill you, is the moral of that book. But regardless of the restrictions of the time, pulp novels were very important to a lot of people and did help a lot of people back then. So they are a really important part of queer history that are not entirely looked back on in a negative way. Anyway, this book is by Alyssa Serkis and Monica Nolan. I did a little bit of research. I can't find anything about Alyssa Serkis. As far as I know, this is the only thing she's ever written, as at least under this name, whereas Nolan has kind of made this stuff her brand. Her website says pulp and pep for the modern reader. This was her first book, but she's done a lot of similar stuff since then. Having now read this book, and don't worry, I'm gonna go through the lesbian horror stories with you, don't worry. But having now read this book, I can tell you that it is a conscious effort to subvert the more negative conventions of the pulp genre, the tragic endings, the corruption, etc., etc. All of these stories, it's the exact opposite. All of these stories are obligated to end happily, with the couple being madly in love and having defeated all of the obstacles in their way. I also enjoyed that every story in this book is kind of exemplifies an iconic moment in queer women's history. It's not an educational source at all, but I do appreciate the little nods to history, even if it's very stereotype heavy and kind of overdoes the period slang to an extreme at times. Very much not an educational source. I just thought that was a little haha. Little bit of fun extra effort they put in. Okay, we're gonna get into the lesbian horror story soon, but first I just need to tell you a little bit about this week's sponsor, Function of Beauty. Function of Beauty creates custom shampoos and conditioners made for your unique hair type. You fill out a quiz on their website about your hair type, your hair history, your goals for your hair. Function of Beauty will put together your custom formula. You can even change things up to fit your new needs depending on the season, or if you change your hair. I know that Function of Beauty got me through my little gay new hair color every week phase a couple of years ago. You even get to customize the color and the fragrance of your products, and it's August, which means we need to start preparing for spooky time. Did I? Yep, I still smell eucalyptus. Oh, there's eucalyptus Function of Beauty in my nose. Did you know that Function of Beauty abides by the EU's ingredient regulations? Okay, what? So, Tia, why are you mentioning what? Well, it turns out that the EU bans 1,400 ingredients compared to the US with only 11. And of course, all Function of Beauty products contain no parabens or sulfates and are 100% vegan and cruelty-free. And dermatologist tested, so they won't irritate your scalp even if you have sensitive skin. So go check out Function of Beauty. You can use my link in the description below to get 20% off your first set. And now take it away, future Tia. I straightened my bangs for you here for the majority of the video, so I don't have to deal with people being like, oh, your bangs aren't even the whole time. Because I know. I edited the last footage I filmed, and I know. Are you gonna sleep like a weirdo? Is this your chosen spot now? So our first tale is called Village Girl. It follows a protagonist called Jean, who is a good country horse girl until she arrives in New York City, fresh from the farm and filled with pain. She had to flee her homophobic small town after a traumatic incident which involved her love interest Kathy and her horse. She gets very upset thinking about her horse and horses and what happened to her horse in this incident TM. Her horse was named Cracker, by the way. In the meantime, she's taken a job at this obscure little gay bar in New York called the Stonewall Inn, and seems to have already slept with like half the city, even though apparently she's been there like a week. She's dropping all the old lesbian slang, you know, the butches, the femmes, you heard of them? So one night she's hooking up with this artist girl, and there's a sculpture in her apartment. of a horse. Horse? The word jangled sharply in Jean's ear. She turned away, unable to meet Louise's puzzled brown eyes. How could she have failed to notice how like crackers they were? Jean ran from the loft, trying to escape the memories that had begun to surface. She saw in her mind's eye jagged images, Cracker on his side, blood on her own hands, Kathy crying, her blouse unbuttoned. Yeah, I know, it's really dramatic. She runs away from a hookup because the woman looks too much like her horse. But Jean, you know, she's still horny, so she runs right back to the bar. She looks at the first girl she sees and goes, "What do you know about horses?" And the girl goes, "What the fuck are you talking about? I don't know anything about horses." And Jean's like, "Perfect!" And then she hooks up with that girl instead. Anyway, one night she's wandering the dark streets and just wanders on into the police horse stables. One of the horses is distressed and she calms it down. So this policewoman who's there, whose name is Midge, Midge O'Brien, police officer, she offers Jean, the protagonist is named Jean. She offers Jean a job at the stables taking care of the horses because she's just so good with them. And this is quite the moral dilemma for Jean. This is quite the moral dilemma for Jean because she's a horse girl, but she's a gay horse girl. And the relationship between the police and the gay community at the time is, she works at a bar that regularly gets raided. Plus, it is revealed that her traumatizing incident, which scared her out of her small town, was that her love interest, Kathy, was the daughter of the sheriff, and when he caught them hooking up, he killed her horse and threatened to throw her in jail. But, of course, because we need drama in this story, she agrees to take the job for the horses, and also maybe a little bit because this policewoman Midge is maybe giving her some gay vibes and maybe kind of cute. Louise, the artist girl with the horse eyes, she and Joan end up hooking up again and having some interesting conversations. Louise's next words caught Jean off guard. They caught me off guard too. "So this horse thing of yours, I understand perfectly what you're going through. I've been in psychoanalysis for years and my analyst is an expert in this sort of thing." Jean listened with interest as Louise told her about the intricate theory which explained the ties between lesbians and horses. This is not elaborated on. You know, this seems like the opener to something quite interesting, but no, they never tell you what the intricate relationship between lesbians and horses is. They just leave you with that to just think about. Jean grows more fascinated by Midge, tries to drop some hints, subtle hints. "Midge, have you ever had a best friend?" Jean began. "Well, sure, all kids have best friends. What about when you weren't a kid anymore? Did you ever have a friend who was just somehow special?" "I've certainly known a lot of people in my life who were very special," Midge responded carefully. It ends up turning out that Midge is in fact gay and also has a girlfriend. She ends up having a big crisis of morality after a raid on a gay bar puts her horse in danger. Priorities. And yes, you didn't hear wrong, despite this, she does have a girlfriend who seems to understand what's going on very well. Turning to Jean, she said, "Thank you, Jean, and try to understand. Midge's problem is over-identification with her father, which compelled her to embrace a patriarchal power system, while her own desires placed her squarely in opposition to that very system. She does the best she can." Girl, leave her. And what do you know, that very night, a new girl shows up at the gay bar door, fresh from the farm, and full of pain, and who is it but Kathy, Jean's long-lost love. And they reunite, and the beginnings of the gay rights movement are just starting up, and it's very exciting, and everybody is hyped to fight for it. And that's the end of the story. It's not my favorite one. It's kind of weird. You'd think they would start with, like, their best material to draw people in, but honestly, it gets progressively more batshit insane as it goes on. Like, it starts with the worst ones. The second story it's called Miss Barnard's Unit, and I read this one while sitting by a lake, so I didn't have my computer with me to take any notes, and I was gonna come back to it and do it, but honestly, I don't want to. This one sucks. You're not missing anything. There's nothing problematic in it, like literally nothing spicy at all. It's just kind of boring and badly written, and the only thing from it that I care to inflict on you is the quote, "Pauline silently cursed society for its unnatural restraints on the relationship between woman and horse." The third story is called The Stable Boy. It follows a protagonist called Peg, who is not like other girls. Other girls like boys, and she likes horses. She stood there a moment, inhaling the smells, leather, oats, and the sweaty, musky, indefinable scent that said, "Horses." Then she went to greet Merrylegs, her faithful old pony. She had belonged to Peg since Peg's 9th birthday, and it seemed not so long ago that she and Merrylegs had been part of a troop of other little girls and their ponies. Peg sighed. Now the other ponies were sold, their former mistresses no longer interested in horses, instead inexplicably fascinated by clothes and boys. Even Marjorie and Doreen, Peg's closest pals in the pony club days, now acted as if they didn't know a forelock from a fetlock. Yeah. Can you imagine how desperately Peg wanted them to understand that she would never tire of horses? So she's at the stables, and that day there's a new stable boy, and they immediately bond over the wholesome love of horses and reading horse girl books when they were growing up. And wait a second. How funny that you've read that, Peg exclaimed. Most boys won't read something they think's a girl's book. Pat blushed. Yes, Peg and Pat. Peg and Pat, and you're trying to tell me these aren't lesbians? Pat blushed and said, my sister had a copy and I happened to read it when I was sick. Sensing he was embarrassed, Peg changed the subject. You're lucky to have a job here. I'd love to have a job like this, but my mother would never let me. She says there's a reason the term is stable boy. When I have my own stables, I'm going to hire nobody but girls. Lesbian horse girl commune, let's go. Actually, that's spoilers. We'll get there. I'm going to hire nobody but girls. I know how you feel, Pat said somberly. I'm just taking advantage of an outmoded system of discrimination. Stares into the camera. Peg goes home that night and has to deal with her normie family who doesn't understand horses. Turning, her mother exclaimed sharply, Peg, what are you doing in those dreadful jodhpurs? I thought you were going to the country club with Carol. Weren't Doreen and Marjorie going to be there too? Remembering her resolution, Peg lifted her head defiantly. I'm through with Doreen and Marjorie. They're nothing but a pair of nasty old fakes. Peg, really? Her mother exclaimed in horror. They can go on trying to be glamour girls if that's how they get their kicks, but from now on, I'm going to the stables every day. I'm going to help Pat take care of the horses. Horses? Not again? And who is Pat? Once safely in her room, Peg began to calm down. She hoped her dad could smooth things over. He seemed to understand that she was different from other girls. Horse girls truly are the most oppressed group in society. So she and Pat, Peg and Pat, they bond more, and she realizes that the best compromise to stay true to her horse girl values and to stick it to her bratty friends and her sister and her mom is to invite Pat to the dance. He picks her up at her house and meets her family because this is like the 50s or something. So, and her family approves very highly of this wonderful young gentleman, and they have a lovely time at the dance, and they share one singular, good Christian, romantic smooch until a bunch of kids who are there from Pat's school recognize her as their female classmate. The implication, by the way, is not that Pat is a trans guy, just that she cross-dressed to get a job that's stereotypically for boys, and then accidentally fell into a very heterosexual romance. Peg is upset that she was lied to, but her cool Uncle Roger, who I think it's implied is also gay, he convinces her that Pat is actually— how am I keeping these names straight? By the way, can we take a minute to appreciate that I'm actually keeping these names straight? Back when everyone thought that Pat was a boy, her uncle had been like, oh, good young gentleman, good wholesome couple, I will invite you out for lunch with me. And he's like, you know what? Kids' lunch plans are still on. Wink. He's gay, and he knows exactly what's going on. I came to find you, said Peg. My uncle's taking us to lunch at the country club, remember? I thought you'd never want to talk to me again, Pat muttered, turning away. Oh, Pat, don't be silly. Peg's voice shook. I feel terrible about last night. I was such a dope. I'd feel the same way about you if you were a girl or a boy. Or a horse. And they have a gay old time at lunch with her uncle, literally, that's what it says. Luncheon was gay. The writers really take advantage of the fact that the word gay used to just be like a word that meant happy, so that they use it multiple times in this book in just like a haha, luncheon was gay. Before we move on to the next story, Pastures of Passion, I just want to say the pacing of some of the stories in this book are whack. Like, it feels like they're trying to fit a whole novel's worth of events into, like, 20 pages. But that's also probably what people who are reading this want. Like, they just want to be told a fun story. So that's fine. I guess that's not a real problem. Another thing that bothers me a little bit about this book that is more of a genuine con for me on the cons list, the pros and cons list of this book. Definitely a con is that there's some weird comments about pubescent girls. Like, I realize that that's a really important time in a lot of people's lives for discovering your sexuality and your identity, etc. But I personally, personal preference, just me personally, personal preference, never want to hear the phrase budding breasts. Don't like saying it either, does not feel good. Anyway, Pastures of Passion. This time around our protagonist is named Aureola. Don't love that, sounds like areola. 1930s, the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, time to abandon our family farm for a better life in the city because I got one raisin for Christmas and my only friend is a corncob doll. Yeehaw! So they're driving across the country to find a better life in California, and they stop briefly on the side of the road and Aureola gets distracted by a beautiful horse in the field and runs off to chase it, only to be separated from her family. She's 9 years old at this point, by the way. She's not just like— actually, every other fully grown person in this book would also just chase a horse into a field and get separated from their family as well. What am I even saying? But she's 9 years old. Like I said, her only friend is a corncob doll. She dreams of having not only a real friend, but a best friend. A best friend. A best friend. So isn't it super cool and convenient that she gets found by a girl her age named Anna Maria, whose family owns the horse that she was chasing in the field. The family takes her in, and she and Anna Maria are best friends now. They are it's been one day and they are best friends. For some reason I assumed when I was reading this that like this is just her life now. She lives with them now. Family's not coming back. So I assumed that like a significant amount of time was gonna pass and like, but no, it's been like a day and they're just like, we're soulmates. Oriola's family does very quickly manage to track her down, and they're very grateful to Anna Maria's family for taking her in during that stressful one day. As they chugged away, Pa remarked to Ma, "I guess them Mexicans ain't so different from the rest of us." Ma replied, "Yep, the Lord visits hard times on the white people and the brown people just the same." Yeehaw! So these two very good friends must part, but they vow to always keep in contact and write each other letters so that they can one day fulfill their wish of living together. "Dear Anna Maria, I sure do miss you. When I was picking peaches yesterday, a drop of the juice fell into my mouth on accident, and for some reason the sweet nectar set me to thinking about the time we spent together." You're like 9! Well, actually, I think some time's passed. You're like 10 or 11 at most! Get out of here with the sexual peach imagery! So it turns out, big shock, California is not the better life they had hoped for, but in fact a capitalist hellscape, and Oriola is being rapidly radicalized. "Dear Anna Maria, we've moved to a new camp again. I do so wish that we could settle in one place for more than a month or two, if only so that it would be easier for your letters to find me. I've met a girl here named Mary Sykes at this new camp, and she and I have gotten friendly. It's nice to have someone to spend time with, but sometimes being with her only makes me miss you more. Besides, once pea picking is over, we'll move on to a new crop, a new camp, and I'll find a new friend. P.S. How can we truly be free if we are enslaved by the chains of capitalism?" I think by this point they are supposed to be teenagers. I think time has passed, but just imagine like a 9-year-old just, "How can we truly be free if we are enslaved by the chains of capitalism?" Don't worry about any of that. Anna Maria's side of the story is just as whack. So she's been teaching this rich girl named Catherine how to ride horses, and Catherine is now seems to be in love with her or something because she's forcibly sugar mommying her, trying to get her a career in banking or something. And Anna Maria is so guilty about this for some reason because she feels like she's cheating on Oriola. Girl, just take her money and spend it on your real life. It's fine. Just scheme a little bit. But that's not all, because Catherine wants them to move in together, but if Anna Maria moves in with her, there will be no room at the new house for her horse. Yes, this is the horse that Oriola chased into a field because he was just so beautiful. And now she's gonna have to sell the horse and move in with her sugar mommy, and this is the last straw. So Oriola decides that she is running back to Texas right now to save her wife. And the horse. The horse too, don't forget about the horse. She has to ride the rails there because it's the Depression, the Dust Bowl. Along the way she acquires an entourage of like sassy, stereotypical hobos. It's weird. This one goes off the fucking rails so fast near the end. Oriola goes to this place where Anna Maria is like riding in this horse competition. I don't know how these things work. I'm not even remotely a horse girl. But she's riding in the horse competition and she needs to do well so that she can get a better price for the horse, etc. So they have a big confrontation. Now Anna Maria's eyes filled with tears. "No, Oriola, I can't. I must pay the bank loan and buy Mama's medicine. I must take care of my family. The job at the bank pays twice as any horse training job would." "So now you're just gonna forget about me and go live with Catherine?" Oriola demanded. Now Anna Maria's eyes were flashing with anger. "You are the one who has made so many new friends in California, and besides, there are ideological differences between us that I do not think can be reconciled." "And the horse?" Oriola asked accusingly. "Mr. Pugh will pay more than $200 for it. There's no other way," Anna Maria replied with finality. Oriola pleaded. "One thing I've learned during these hard times is that you don't sell out your friends, and I expect that means you don't sell your friends either. Hasn't he always been a good friend to you? He's a horse. He's livestock, a commodity," replied Anna Maria. "It's your kind of thinking that will lead to the workers' uprising," Oriola cried out in frustration. "It's your kind of thinking that keeps people from working their way to the American dream," shot back Anna Maria. "You can can tomatoes, but you can't can the revolution," shouted Oriola, now in an insurrectionist frenzy. Before Anna Maria could reply, a voice called, "Excuse me, is this where the horse trading takes place?" Everyone turned. A woman in a smartly tailored linen suit was approaching, followed by a Florida man wearing tasseled loafers, joppers, and a cowboy hat, and a pearl-buttoned shirt. "I'm Marjorie Rumpelmayer, and this is George Stedman. We're from Outer Studios in Hollywood, California," she said, shaking hands all around. All the anger drained out of Oriola and Anna Maria. "Hollywood, California?" they repeated in rapturous unison. "George here will be directing our next picture, Bandito the Renegade Stallion," Marjorie continued efficiently. "And we've been looking everywhere for our Bandito. I'm pleased to say that I think we've found not only our Bandito, but also our little feather, the Indian princess. And Ellie Buckshot, the barmaid, turned outlaw. He beamed at Anna Maria and Oriola. But I'm Mexican, Anna Maria said, puzzled. That doesn't matter, George assured her. Oh, Oriola, I don't want to be a banker. I want to move to Hollywood and live with you, Anna Maria said, shedding tears of joy. I will send money back to my family and never forget them. Oriola flung her arms around her friend. Anna Maria, how could I have ever thought that devoting my life to the class struggle would satisfy me, when all I ever wanted was a career in the pictures? Thematically, this is hot fucking garbage stew. I have no idea what I just read. None. I feel aggressed. I feel aggressed by this passage that I just read. Fourth story in this book is called Snake Eyes for Silky. Our protagonist is named, thankfully not Silky, that's the horse. Our protagonist is named Terry, and she rides horses. Has recently come into the amazing privilege of having a job riding this horse called Silk Stockings, Silky for short, but the job is tainted by the fact that some of these races are rigged, so she'll have to lose on purpose, and it's just not fair to stifle such a magnificent horse as Silk Stockings. Damn that shady boss lady, Ginger Delmonico. How is that somehow an even hornier name than Silk Stockings? And after losing a race on purpose, Terry goes out to punch the barn in frustration, as a horse girl does. Terry was punching the stable wall, choking back sobs, when she realized that she was not alone. I thought you were made of tougher stuff than this with the lip you laid on me after the last race, said a familiar, husky voice. Ginger's taunt turned all of Terry's tears into pure fight as she turned to face Silky's nemesis. What do you know about tough? You think being tough is pushing people around that can't do nothing about it? That ain't tough, that's just cheap. You ever think that maybe caring about something makes you tough? Well, I care about Silky, and I can't stand to do wrong by her no more. Go ahead, do me in. Do it right now. Was this how it would end? Yes, she thinks Ginger is literally going to murder her. But instead of a bullet, she felt Ginger grasp her arms. The big redhead pulled Terry close and kissed her roughly, then gently, then roughly again. Before Terry had a chance to think about what was happening, she felt the cool steel of a gun press into her side, and Ginger, a cigarette clenched between her teeth, was hissing, "Step lively, sister. We're going to my place." We saw one female presenting nipple during Jean's antics in the first story. You know, I thought this bullshit was leading up to at least 2 nipples, but no, there are no more nipples for us. But honestly, that's completely fine with me. I've had to read so much garbage smut for this channel, for books I've read on this channel, that like this is really kind of a breath of fresh air. I love enjoying shit like Terry showed Ginger that Silky wasn't the only one she could get to the finish line without having to actually read anything, you know? Like, so Terry continues like this for a while, torn between woman and horse, until one day she eavesdrops outside of Ginger's apartment door and realizes that actually she's not Silky's nemesis. She's being forced to do all of this by her evil ex-husband who owns the horse. He's a mobster named Jimmy, so you know he's some hot shit apparently. Ginger and Terry hatch this plan where they plot and bribe their way into like the biggest, coolest horse race in town, so that if they win with Silky, they'll be like horse race world influencers or something, and Jimmy won't be able to touch them anymore. Jimmy smiled in a way that sent chills down Terry's spine. Tell you what, Ginger, I'll let this one race go. Let's make a bet on it. If Silk Stockings wins, she's yours, no more strings attached. But if by some strange chance she loses... Now even the smile was gone. If she loses, prompted Ginger in a voice Terry could barely recognize. The jockey's out, I'm in, and the horse is dead, said Jimmy, and now his voice was like ice. But you already knew that, didn't you, doll? This is not just any story, this is a story from the Big Book of Lesbian Horse Stories, so obviously they win. Ginger handed her a ticket as the crowd began pushing them towards the winner's circle. What's this? Terry asked, beginning to smile. I put our last $100 on Silk Stockings to win. Do you think I did the right thing? Ginger asked, with a sly grin. I hear it's a sucker's bet, Terry teased her. Love is always a sucker's bet, said Ginger. This time, I decided to be one of the suckers. Wow. Inspirational. So Pastures of Passion, which is not only just the best title in this book, but that's why I keep saying it. I love to say it. Pastures of Passion. So Pastures of Passion was definitely a turning point where shit got a lot weirder. And I think that Snake Eyes for Silky falls in the same category of weird. The next story is called The Chosen Horse, and this one ups the weird to an all-new standard that I am very excited to announce will be maintained for the rest of the book. The Chosen Horse. The protagonist is named Lena. She's like this spacey, weird girl neighborhood annoyance, and her best friend, you guessed it, is a horse named Johnny Apple. What a clever horse he is, Lena said admiringly. Ah, but more than just clever, Mr. Carples had replied solemnly. He then told Lena how, on the previous day, they had been selling fruit outside the yeshiva on 14th Street. Some of the young scholars were arguing over the Talmud, and one of them had quoted a passage incorrectly. He had paid no attention to Johnny Apple's indignant snorts. This story thrilled Lena. If a horse can know the Talmud, she thought, surely so can I. Right, because her dream is to study the scripture, but women weren't allowed to. So the horse starts teaching her. The horse. With a twinkle in his eye, Mr. Carples had tossed fruit in the air, pears, apples, and even a cluster of grapes, and then deftly Johnny returned them with a toss of his muzzle. Lena watched spellbound as horse and fruit seller kept the fruit aloft with their juggling for several minutes, by which time it was bruised and unsaleable. You see, Mr. Carples had concluded, Johnny Apple's teacher was not only a learned rabbi, but also an accomplished juggler. One day Lena is out and about and she meets this hot, dirty beggar girl who is also friends with the horse, which means that they should be friends too, obviously. But this all happens right on time for her family to get fed up with her being so weird and disappointing and having ambitions that a woman shouldn't. So it's time for her to go away and work at the factory. Beggar girl is named Lily. She's hot in a grimy sort of way, you know? Lena brings her a singular bone to chew on and some soap. Hashtag romance, only to find out that she's a Christian. But they reconcile their differences immediately and they decide that they're going to go and work at the factory together, and Lily can rent the spare room in Lena's parents' house and they can be together all the time. Their plan, amazing, flawless. And when they work in the factory, they're going to be able to make some money so that they can support the horse, Johnny Apple, because his owner, Mr. Carples, the fruit man, has mysteriously disappeared, and now he's living in an old barn and eating hay. No, they're gonna buy so many oats once they're rolling in their factory money. The old woman cast a shrewd glance at the two girls and croaked, "This is your sister?" That's my best old woman croak. "This is your sister?" That was better. That was a good old woman croak. Lena wondered if the old woman was slightly crazy. No one would mistake her and Lily for sisters. No, pretzel woman. Also, the old woman sells pretzels. I realized I left out that context. She's not just calling her pretzel. No, pretzel woman. No, pretzel woman, we have not the same parents. Then Lena thought for a moment and added, "But I love Lily, as if she were my sister." You've met like twice. And I feel the same way about Lena, Lily said shyly. The old woman fixed her eyes on the girls with an unblinking stare. So, you are not sisters, yet you feel like you are sisters. Yes, I see it. And that too is a kind of sisterhood, a very powerful sisterhood. She paused, swaying back and forth a little. But this power is best kept hidden. Is she in the lesbian Illuminati? The old woman is actually Charlene from Satan Was a Lesbian. They didn't die in that car crash. That car, it was actually the DeLorean from Back to the Future, and they actually went to like fucking 1910 or whatever this is. Actually, no, they would have to go to the 1800s then for her to be an old woman by the time the story takes place. I don't care. I'm sticking to this conspiracy theory. The old pretzel woman is actually Charlene. Then Lena goes home that night and her parents are like, "Listen, we know we were just on about that factory thing, but we changed our mind. Don't worry about the factory anymore. You're getting married. Here's a man." And the man at the door, it's the evil nephew of the nice fruit man who used to own the horse, but the fruit man died. And so the evil nephew got the horse, and now he's been neglecting the horse, and he's planning to sell him to the glue factory. Why is the plot kind of thick? Lena is appalled, but her father is like, "OMG, hashtag girl boss, you sell that horse, sweaty." And then Lily shows up and is like, "Hi, excuse me, I'd like to inquire about renting a room." Girl, read the room. And the evil horse neglecting nephew turns around and is like, "No, you're a dirty beggar. You have no money to rent a room. Get out of here." And Lena's like, "No, but I love her." And Lena's parents are like, "Oh no, what have we done? What have we done to deserve such a horrible child? This is just like that time with her uncle, who was also bad and disowned by the family. Wonder whatever happened to him. Why are we bringing this up right now? So anyway, they run away together and they steal the horse. And who do they encounter on the way but the pretzel woman? "You did not listen to the pretzel woman. You did not keep hidden what should be kept hidden, and so evil has befallen you." The girls hung their heads. Lena wondered if perhaps the wisdom of the old pretzel woman could help them with their current difficulties. "It is the wisdom the girl wants, or information. Wisdom I give you freely. You must find a place where the strange is ordinary and the ordinary is strange." Lena and Lily stared blankly at each other, and then back at the pretzel woman, who spoke again. "Wisdom I give freely, but information will cost you 3 cents. They pay her 3 cents and she tells them to go to Coney Island. So they do. They see all the usual early 20th century circus human rights violations. See Sammy the sword swallower, who has entertained the crowned heads of Europe. Watch him swallow rapiers, knives, and sabers of all description. The man's patter went on, and he held back the tent flap to display a sword swallower, a tall, handsome man in an embroidered cape holding up a small sword. Then Uncle Schumel? Lena screamed. The sword swallower stared in surprise, and tossing his sword aside, he leapt off the stage and gathered his niece in a warm embrace. Johnny Apple caught the sword and balanced it on his nose as the crowd applauded both the heartwarming reunion and the talented horse. Everyone clapped. This predates the invention of Tumblr, but everyone clapped. Uncle Schumel laughed gaily. I'm sure he did. Anyway, her uncle is like, I got you, your girlfriend is hot, by the way, hashtag gay rights. You all have jobs here now, the end. The next story is called Lady Snow. Just thinking about this one gets me. Our protagonist is named Julie, and she's at a party for cool people who are all wearing white Guess jeans. She's just a humble horse girl. She doesn't have any white Guess jeans, and she's feeling quite out of place with all of these fancy rich people from the horse racing world. But she's an up-and-coming rider, and she's been taken under the wing of the grand champion, the horsiest of horse girls who everyone lets step on them, Mommy Brittany. Julie's best friend used to be Liz, but then there was an incident. Capitalized. Liz used to always warn her not to do drugs and get corrupted by those degenerates in their white Guess jeans, but Julie kind of likes getting corrupted and feeling cool and drinking an alcohol. Anyway, Julie continued, slurring her words a little. I just knew the first time I rode Lady Snow, and I felt those muscles, and how responsive she was, you know. Like she knew what I was thinking before I thought it. She's sure some horse, the trainer commented, and she's really hitting top form at the right time. What is it, less than a month until the Grand Prix? She seems decent enough, said Ashley, who had joined the group midway through Julie's story, but you don't actually expect to ride a Traikner in the Grand Prix, do you? She added smugly. Father bought me a Hanoverian. Julie was crushed. She didn't have the right pants for this crowd, and she didn't have the right horse. She looked at the glass in her hand. It was empty again. If she could just have another gin and tonic, she knew she would feel better. And then Brittany was there with a gin and tonic in one hand and a small cigarette in the other. A cigarette with a Swedish scent. A joint. It's called a weed bunt. Julie took the drink and hesitated a moment when Brittany offered her the joint. She saw Ashley looking at the joint, her eyes glittering with hunger. Julie took the joint. For once, someone else would be on the outside looking in. Then Brittany invites Julie to dance with her. And Julie flashes back to the incident, capitalized with Liz, which was when they were dancing in a barn and Julie didn't leave enough room for Jesus, and Liz got scared away by her advance. Then Brittany and her cousin Blaine. Brittany and Blaine, those are the douchiest people alive. I guess that's the point. Well-named characters. There you go. Brittany and Blaine pull Julie into their sex dungeon to do some coke. This is like a 90s PSA. If you inhale one weed, you will be in the sex dungeon doing coke by the end of the night. Do you want to be in the sex dungeon doing coke? Well, Julie does. But when Brittany tries to seduce her, it's just too soon. She's just thinking about Liz, and she can't, and she runs away. When Julie awoke the next day, she felt fine. Oh, maybe a little draggy, but that was it. Drugs weren't so bad after all. In fact, Julie wanted more. That warning of Liz's had just been sour grapes, she decided, since Liz was stuck giving lessons to bratty little kids now. Brittany was the one with all the trophies. Julie noticed her list from last night and underlined have sex with Brittany with fierce decision. Yes, she put that on her to-do list. By the time Julie got out of the barn, the draggy feeling she'd awoken with was worse, and she was hoping that Blaine or Brittany would come by the stables that day. Finally, as Julie was trying to stop the nosebleed that had been plaguing her all morning, Blaine and Brittany appeared outside Lady Snow's stall. Yes, Lady Snow. Yeah, her horse is named after cocaine too. Julie had worried that Brittany might be angry at her for leaving the night before, but Brittany smiled at Julie and said, "Poor baby, you look like you could use a lift." "That'd be super, Brittany." Julie nodded eagerly. The trio crowded into the back of Lady Snow's stall as the horse whinnied in alarm. Blaine pulled out a vial and a small spoon. Julie watched eagerly as he dipped the spoon into the vial and snorted its contents. After the first spoonful of cocaine, Julie felt her head clear, but she knew from last night's experience that more cocaine would just make her feel better. Julie snorted a second spoonful and was going for a third when Brittany grabbed the vial and said, "Slow down, honey, leave a little for," and then it happened. Julie couldn't even remember which came first, Brittany's half-hearted oopsie or the sound of the vial hitting the stall floor. Before Julie could even stop her, Lady Snow had snuffled up the remains of the white powder. The horse does cocaine. The horse not only does cocaine, actually, but the horse also gets addicted to cocaine after a single use, just like Julie. We get to read one whirlwind paragraph from the point of view of the horse on cocaine. The other horse that Lady Snow was talking about here, Blizzard, is Brittany's horse. You snuffled around in the hay, hoping to find more of the white powder. You liked the white powder, it made you feel good. You knew you could jump higher than any of the other horses, even higher than Blizzard. You noticed that your mistress was leaving and wondered when she would be back. You liked your mistress, but you didn't like her new friends. You missed Liz. Liz would always save you an apple. Liz was your best friend forever, but you didn't want to think about Liz anymore. You wondered when your mistress would come back with more white powder. You looked over at Blizzard's stall. Blizzard always had plenty of white powder. Blizzard never had to snuffle in his stall. You wondered why you didn't get as much white powder as Blizzard when you knew what a bad-tempered horse Blizzard was. You wanted to get out of your stall now. Your stall seemed very small suddenly. You were happy when your mistress returned with your saddle, but you were sad because she didn't bring you any more of the white powder. Maybe Blizzard could jump higher than you after all. Fast forward like 2 more days, Julie's already done heroin and crystal meth. Every drug. She does every drug now. She inhaled 1 weed and now she does every drug. And oh no, she's lost track of time. Today is the day of a big competition. Not the big competition, but the qualifier for it. Blaine is super nice and helpful that day. He gives her 2 labeled vials of cocaine, 1 for her and 1 for her horse. But something is wrong when they're riding in the competition. They're just out of sync somehow, and they end up falling. But they do qualify just barely for the competition. Then suddenly the labels on the bottles that Blaine gave her start peeling off, and underneath Julie and Lady Snow, it says C and H. So they gave the horse heroin to sabotage her, but she's too stupid to figure this out because they're like her BFFs 5 ever. And she doesn't realize that anything could possibly be wrong with this situation until she catches Blaine and Brittany, who are cousins, having sex in a hot tub. Brittany saw her first. Oh good, you're awake. Come join us. But I'm not. Are you? Julie stuttered. Bisexual? Of course. Isn't everyone? Said Brittany with a languid wave of her hand. Yeah, that's what's concerning about this situation. So Julie decides that it's time to quit, and while going through withdrawal from every drug, she drives up to Liz's house and is followed by Blaine and Brittany. So they all have a big showdown in Liz's driveway where it's revealed that actually Brittany and Blaine did the exact same thing to Liz a couple of years ago, and that's why her horse racing career failed. So Julie tells Blaine and Brittany to go away, and Liz reveals that she's actually been in love with Julie the entire time, but she is just too traumatized by her experience with Brittany to truly love another woman ever again. But if Julie can get over being addicted to every drug in like a day, then Liz can do the exact same with her trauma. And so they have sex on a pile of hay, and this solves everyone's problems. There's a weird biphobic comment in here about Brittany's bisexual tricks. It's not bad to portray biphobia in fiction or even to have a bisexual antagonist in a story. It just feels a little bit weird that she's like the only bisexual character in this entire anthology, and the portrayal is you and your bisexual tricks. I don't know, just it's just a little bit sus. The day of the race, Brittany tries to bully Julie. You're a loser, Brittany was saying. I played you. I played your precious Liz. I played them all. Nobody beats Brittany. I can have anybody I want, man or woman. All I have to do is snap my fingers. Julie heard her number being called over the PA. Goodbye, Brittany. I'm a winner. Brittany called after her voice high with hysteria. Do you hear me? Brittany Fairchild is the winner. Julie realized that Brittany had no more power over her. She had no fear, only pity. Brittany still didn't understand that when you play with drugs, nobody wins. Usually the stories in this book end with them winning some big horse competition and yay, they're a winner. But this one, no. She's just on her way to the competition, but she's already a winner because she did every drug and now she doesn't do any drug. The final story is called Ride to Freedom. The protagonist is named Jenny, and she's a dissatisfied housewife. I think it's like the 50s or 60s. She feels wrong and trapped in her heterosexual marriage to Jeb. None of the other girls get it. She can't talk to anyone because she's not like other girls. I suppose that is the overlap between horse girls and lesbians, or queer women in general. I'm sorry, bi women, trans women, you're included. I'm sorry, this book is so, like, white cis lesbians. Anyway, I guess that is the overlap between horse girls and queer girls. It's just kind of feeling not like other girls or like part of some exclusive culture. I understand why lesbian horse stories works as a concept. So our heroine protagonist Jenny, she peaked in Girl Scouts, this is American, it's called Girl Guides in Canada, but finally a relatable character. It's about the inherent homoeroticism of Girl Guides. Girl Scouts, I don't care, I'm Canadian. So Girl Scouts, Girl Guides, whatever, it was fucking lit. She got to ride horses. She really idolized this one camp counselor who taught her how to ride horses, this strong, athletic woman named Barb. And when Jenny grew up, she got a job at her old camp as a horse riding instructor while all of the other girls were off getting married. But eventually, feeling different and ostracized from all of her old friends finally got to her, and she decided to leave the camp to get married. First guy who ever showed interest in her, Jeb, she was just like, yeah, okay. I'm getting married. Love to feel normal and relate to my straight friends again. Get married. When Jenny left the camp, Barb shed a single tear for her and gave her her favorite horse from the camp to keep. So no reason to dwell on that or anything. That's a completely normal interaction. Anyway, Barb now has half a lung and lives in Jenny and her husband's stables. So many relatable characters in this last story. You really hit me with it all at once at the very end. Together, Barb and I have one set of lungs. This is my soulmate, Jenny, back off. So Jenny is taking care of her one day in the stables and completely forgets that she was supposed to be cooking dinner. Cooking dinner for Jeb and the boys. Jenny's cooking dinner for Jeb and the boys. Jenny rushed to the stove, but it was too late. The steaks were overdone. Jeb liked them practically raw. A rumble of voices told her that the men were arriving. She closed her eyes, trying to will her stomach out of the knot it was tightening into, but her eyes snapped open when someone slapped her on the backside. "Wake up, honey." It was one of her husband's friends. She couldn't remember his name. They all looked alike to her. "You've got hungry men to feed."
Feeding my hungry guys.
So in the forests around their house, there's a bunch of wild mustangs, which Jeb and the boys are fantasizing about catching. Some of those mustangs won't break. Sometimes there's nothing left to do but shoot 'em, Jeff returned. But if you can't break them, why not just let them go instead of shooting them? Jenny had found herself wondering aloud. Jeb rolled his eyes as the man burst out laughing. The man who slapped her called to Jeb, "What's going on here? Your wife's one of them women libbers?" Yes! For horses. Then he turned to Jenny. "Don't you know that you can get 50 cents a pound from the dog food factory?" Tears sprang to Jenny's eyes at the thought. Why couldn't the men leave the horses to wander the Oregon hills as they had done for generations? One day Jenny is out riding her horse and she sees the herd of wild mustangs and also a naked woman riding one of them. But she tells herself that she only imagined the naked woman, which sounds very straight. She tries to forget about it and to do her duty to her God and her husband by telling him about where she saw the mustangs. So she does, because she's a dumbass, and Jeb and the boys go out to find them. Jenny also goes out to ride her horse on her own and sees the naked woman in the woods again at the sight of a female presenting nipple, although the nipples are not described. But I can only imagine that at the sight of a female presenting nipple, she faints immediately and bonks her head real hard, only to wake up in an off-the-grid lesbian feminist commune. "Who did you say brought me here?" asked Jenny. "Lisa Moondaughter," repeated the blonde woman. "Well, that's not exactly her real name. See, we keep our first names, but discard our last names as a protest against the patriarchy." "I see you're feeling better," said a warm, husky voice. Jenny looked up and saw Lisa Moondaughter. Her brown eyes looked at Jenny with a gaze as liquid and warm as chocolate syrup, and Jenny's heart was like ice cream melting beneath it. Lisa Moondaughter had clothed her statuesque beauty in a loosely woven tunic-like garment, dyed a rich loamy color, but Jenny remembered the shape and the look of the womanly swells it concealed. "Come, I will show you the farm," Lisa Moondaughter beckoned. "I'd like that," said Jenny. Lisa Moondaughter took Jenny's hand and pulled her off the straw pallet. Jenny felt a current of electricity flowing through her, but realized it was only Lisa Moondaughter's womanly power, dizzying her with its strength. "I came here with my lover. This farm belonged to her family, and with us came a small band of women who wanted to return to Mother Earth and let her nurture them, away from men." "Then you're all—" Jenny choked on the word, her cheeks reddening. "We are all women-identified women," said Lisa Moondaughter bluntly. Okay. So until this point, I was like, what fucking historical context? Okay, I realize this all seems very idyllic to a 50s housewife, but if you hear anyone use this term today, run away very fast. They are a turf, and this community historically was kinda turfy. But I will put that aside for just a second to appreciate the line for a moment. They stood by the tofu barrel, sharing in the eternal bond of womanly experience. I think this is making fun of them. "Join with us." Lisa Moondaughter moved almost imperceptibly towards Jenny. "With me." Jenny gasped as she gazed at Lisa Moondaughter in the glowing twilight. "I've watched you," Lisa Moondaughter continued. "I've seen the way you ride your horse so wildly through the forest since my lover died. ... "Your lover died?" interrupted Jenny curiously. "Yes, of E. coli she caught in the Michigan Women's Music Festival on a sailing expedition." Jenny watched helplessly as a dark cloud of sadness passed over Lisa Moondaughter's face like a shadow over the sea. "Bad hummus," she continued after a moment. "After her death, I felt as though I'd returned to stone. I spent hours riding the wild horses, traveling with the herd. I thought nothing could ever stir me again, until I saw you." What the sweet, ever-loving fuck? So they immediately have sex and decide that they will be together forever. "We will grow old together," Lisa Moondaughter whispered in her ear. "When you are sick, I will care for you, and I will never, ever let you eat the hummus." Sick old women! Exclamation point. Jenny sat up as if she'd heard a rifle shot. How could she have forgotten about Barb? What would Barb do without her? And what about her vows to Jeb? Did they mean nothing? Yes, forget about Jeb. Nobody cares about Jeb. All the rest of her life could not be washed away in the blink of an eye, not even by Lisa Moondaughter's womanly juices. So she runs home to find that Jeb and the boys have captured all of the wild horses, and she knows what she has to do. She grabs Barb, and they free the wild horses, and they run off to join the lesbian commune and be with Lisa Moondaughter. And that's the big book of lesbian horse stories. I do think that obviously it aged badly in some ways, like it's very new for a lesbian pulp novel, but 2002, it still feels old in a lot of ways. Overall, this book can be enjoyable if you do not expect anything too deep from it. It's not very deep. In fact, it's really quite stupid. But the beautiful thing is that is the point of it. Sometimes we all need to consume a little bit of stupidity. Hope you enjoyed coming along on the big book of lesbian horror stories with me. Let me know, ideally on Tumblr because I'm trash and that is where I tend to see things the most. Let me know in my Tumblr asks if you know any other books in this sort of category of fun trash literature, or even just explicitly bad trash literature. You know, I've read one that was like overall not that bad. I'm ready to go down the hellhole again. Give me Satan was a lesbian tier content. Just ruin me as a person with your book recommendations. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another one very soon.